Hi, my name is Courtney Hilton. I'm a postdoctoral fellow in the Harvard Music Lab working with Sam Mia, although today I'm going to be talking about my PhD research I did at the University of Sydney working with Micah Goldwater. The title of my talk, A Metrical Stroop Effect. The metrical part of this refers to speech meter, which is to say when we speak, we put emphasis or stress on some syllables and not others, and we do so in a rhythmically kind of patterned way. The main subject of interest in this talk is how that rhythmic accent or emphasis structure, how the alignment of that with linguistic syntax might have consequences for sentence comprehension, and how misalignment may disrupt sentence comprehension, and how misalignment may also interfere with sensorimotor synchronization. Okay, so there are three main motivating ideas for this research. One is that, as I've been alluding to, speech signals have hierarchical rhythmic structure. This is something that has gotten increasingly more emphasis in recent both empirical and theoretical work about language and speech prosody. Another important motivating idea is that there is a systematic alignment between meter and syntax. And this is true for all sorts of different languages, although there are slightly different alignments depending on which language. The third main point is that the alignment of this metrical accent structure more generally has consequences for how we perceive speech, for how we produce speech, how we coordinate our vocal actions, and for cognition such as working memory or syntactic comprehension and parsing. Now, I don't have time to go into detail about all this motivating research, so if you're interested, I encourage you to check out my preprint, which relates to this talk on the address below there. Okay, so the main thing of interest, as I've said, is does this meter syntax alignment affect syntactic comprehension? I investigate this in this first experiment I will show you here. To do this, we got a bunch of sentences, 48 sentences to be exact. Now, for reasons I don't have time to get into now, we had these sentences in both what's called subject-extracted relative clause structure as well as object-extracted relative clause structure. These different types of structure, both sentences have the same words, but just in a slightly different order, and at least to English language speakers, object-extracted structures are generally a bit harder to understand than subject-extracted ones. Okay, so those are the sentence materials. We then took these sentences and aligned them to a metrical accent pattern in either a congruent or an incongruent way. For the congruent way, it would be something like this. So the boy that helped the girl got an A on the test, whereas the incongruent version would be something like the boy that helped the girl got an A on the test. Now, the key idea that's defining the congruency here is that each small sort of syntactic phrasal unit, or sometimes it's not a full syntactic unit. So, for example, the noun phrase the boy, the congruent versions align the stress to the rightmost edge of that phrase, and in the incongruent condition, that's not the case. In the object-extracted version, it's a bit like this. So the boy that the girl helped got an A on the test. And in the incongruent version, it is the boy that the girl helped got an A on the test. Okay, that's how these sentences were aligned to this metrical accent pattern. Now, in the actual experiment, we had 40 subjects come in and sit in front of a computer. And once they were told about the experiment, the main trials in that experiment involved an initial stage where there was a rhythmic accent pattern. I'll just play that for you now. And then they saw these words appearing on the screen and they read them in time with this accent pattern. So the boy that helped the girl got an A on the test, for example. Okay, let's turn that Right, so there's that rhythmic introduction, and then the words start appearing on the screen in time with that rhythm, and people read that silently in their head. At the end of the sentence presentation, they get given a comprehension probe that either questions their understanding of the main clause of the sentence, so did the boy get an A or did the girl get an A in this instance, or the relative clause, so did the boy help the girl or the girl help the boy. And they respond true or false to these probes. And they get corrective feedback, and if they take too long to respond, they get encouragement to speed up in the next trial. Okay, we had 40 participants go through and do this experiment, going through all 48 sentences randomly assigned to the congruent or incongruent metrical alignments and to the different comprehension probe versions. Okay, so the results here are as following. So as predicted, there was a significant effect of meter syntax alignment on comprehension. So on the y-axis here we have percent correct, average percent correct, and as you can see here, the yellow bars are the congruent alignments and the red bars are the incongruent, and there is indeed a significant effect of that meter syntax alignment here. Very briefly, although it's not as relevant, there is also an effect of the sentence structure and which part of the sentence was probed, so whether it was the main clause or the relative clause. That's not so important. The most important bit is this point here. And we see a roughly similar pattern in the response times, again just highlighting the congruency effect there, although it's a pretty small effect in the response times. That is still statistically significant but quite small. Okay, so this is the first experiment. We followed this up with a second experiment that took the same general idea but with 3 modifications. One, we had 3 different meter syntax alignments this time for both sentences, sentence structures, and crucially, instead of the participants reading these sentences flashing up on the screen, they listened to synthesized speech that they imagined a certain metrical interpretation of. And additionally, as they were listening to this speech, they tapped on a drum pad in time with the metrical accents. So I'll just demonstrate that for you. So it would go like this.
The boy that the girl helped got an A on the test.
Okay, so they would listen to a sentence like that, and that was a congruent alignment in that case. And they do the same comprehension probes and so on. Okay, moving on. So the results here are analogous. So again, we see a consistent, reliable effect of congruency on syntactic comprehension. And that also comes through in the response times as well. Similarly, it's a smallish effect in the response times. Okay. The other important finding here is, as I mentioned, participants were tapping along with these sentences, and prior to doing the main sentence task, they also did a sort of control task where they were presented with neutral rhythms that did not contain speech, but had the same rhythms as the later speech materials. And the y-axis on this plot here represents a ratio between the tapping variability in the speech task versus the tapping variability in this neutral control task. So as you can see here, the subject extracted tapping variability here has a ratio of about 1, indicating that it was similarly variable in both instances. The crucial thing to note here is that participants were significantly more variable in their tapping for the object extracted sentences here. In other words, the alignment was causing them to disrupt their coordination. Okay, so wrapping things up, my final 30 seconds. Meter syntax alignment affects syntactic comprehension for both reading and auditory speech. It also affects sensorimotor coordination. I'd like to discuss in the questions with you all some reasons why this might be the case and how this could have theoretical or practical implications. 2 prominent alternatives are how cognitive conflict between automatic meter syntax reflexes might clash with task demands, and how rhythmic modulations of working memory may play into this. Okay, look forward to your questions. Thanks.